Seven Secrets of Somewhere Lake, Chapter 9, Two Boys and a Pie. Did you ever notice a railroad engine puffs differently when it has on the train someone you especially love? It seems to me it does. Of course, the new modern diesel engine just comes into the station without much change in expression, but the real old-time huffing, puffing, cinder-blowing steam engine always makes a lot of fuss when delivering someone you are anxious to see. We still have steam engines on our little branch line railroad. I have heard that we are not important enough to rate a diesel, and also that our track is not strong enough to support one. Whatever it is that keeps our old-fashioned huffer and puffer in service, I am grateful for it. The engine was nearly on time this morning when our two boys arrived, something very unusual in itself. Its heavy puffs seemed to say, "I got 'em, I got 'em, I got 'em." And when it had accomplished its stop, it stood there drawing in deep breaths to compensate for its extra exertion. The Pullman porter recognized me as he stepped off the train. "I have a couple of mighty fine boys for you this morning, Mr. Campbell," he said with a smile that had made him famous and well liked on this line. "Hello, hi, Bub," cried Jenny, discovering our two boys back of the baggage on the car platform. "Hello, Tony," we waved and called our greetings back and forth while the porter unloaded the suitcases. I kept staring at the two lads. It was hard to believe these were the boys we had known at our sanctuary in years gone by. Hybub had grown even since I had seen him in the winter. Though he looked thin about his face, perhaps it was my own attitude in the matter that made me think so, but it seemed to me he was already beginning to look as stoical as an adding machine and as methodical as a file case. Tony was shooting up like a beanstalk. He was destined to be tall and slender. To be so fitted, his manner and the look in his eyes. There was an exquisite gentleness about the lad that was in no way weakness. His handshake was firm, his manner easy and graceful, his bearing strong, but you felt that he would never knowingly harm any living thing. It was homecoming at our island that day. The first one to greet the two boys was, of course, Zany. The bombastic pup acted as if he had known them all his life. He jumped up on them, he licked their faces, he chewed their ankles, he raced in circles about them, and finally took Tony's cap and hid it in the brush. Everyone disbelieving in love at first sight would have been healed at the skepticism while watching the meeting of Tony and Zany. Tony looked down at the wiggling creature at his feet, saying mostly to himself, No, I don't believe it. There couldn't be such a pup." He stooped down and took Zany in his arms, and the dog was so uncontrollably happy he howled. It was like the reunion of two long-separated brothers, and we saw here the beginning of a companionship which deepened each day that followed. In the meantime, we heard a call that Hybub and Tony recognized at once. "Honk, honk, honk," came from high in a white pine. "Is it Salt?" asked Hybub, with a flash of his old enthusiasm. "Come down here, you old rascal, and stick a quill in me for old time's sake." Salt was coming down, followed by Pepper, both honking happily. When they reached the ground, the two boys picked them up by the forelegs and swung them high overhead. "You remember how to do it, don't you?" asked Jenny. "I've done this 1,000 times in my dreams," Hybub was saying, now holding Salt across his forearm. "Salt looks the same as he always did. I believe he hasn't grown since I saw him." "Probably he has reached his maximum," I remarked. "He is a wonderful animal, never forgetting us. I have no doubt some of his grunts have been, 'Where are Hybub and Tony?'" Oh, here come the chipmunks," said Tony, putting Pepper down and getting ready for the next customer. I supplied the boys with some peanuts, and soon the little animals were jumping to their hands, climbing up their trouser legs, dodging in and out of pockets, and sitting on their shoulders or heads. Several of our friendly chickadees joined the growing circle and snatched peanut crumbs from the boys' hands. Cheer, the red-winged blackbird, came to see what all the excitement was about. Blue jays and red squirrels arrived. I studied Tony and Hybub as they responded to this wild and exciting welcome. Tony's face beamed, and though he was never a talkative person, his expressive eyes said the things his tongue did not. Each creature that came to him was received with an unmistakable love. Hubbub, too, was responding to the friendly approaches of these animal friends. There was a tenderness in his handling of the creatures that was closely akin to reverence, but even now there persisted in his eyes a look of sadness. His laugh died out almost before it began, and his smile barely moved the corners of his mouth. He gave me the impression of someone who was carrying a burden of such weight that it overshadowed everything else life could offer. I was glad when Tony dropped a couple of peanuts in the open collar of Hubbub's shirt. In went a chipmunk after the peanuts, and in went a red squirrel after the chipmunk. Hubbub could not be stoic now. He let out a yell as the two animals raced around against his bare skin, tickling and scratching him. "Yow!" he yelled. "Go hold your battle someplace else. I'm neutral." But the two creatures continued to scuffle about his waistline until he unbuttoned his shirt and set them free. "Tony," he said to his friend, who was leaning against a tree. His eyes rolled up to the sky in pretend innocence. "I'm going to do the same thing to you, only it will be skunks I use, so help me." "Speaking of skunks," said Tony with forced calmness, "have you looked back of you lately? Don't step. If you value your life, don't step any other direction, and don't stay where you are." Hubbub looked cautiously around under these bewildering instructions. There, not 6 feet from him, he saw a skunk eyeing him cautiously. Hubbub started to take a step. Up went the skunk's tail, and Hubbub stopped. One foot held in the air. His face was a study, a mixture of amusement, concern, and wonder. Tony slipped behind a tree and then peeked around to see what was going to happen. Jenny and I were shaking with suppressed laughter. This was the moment we had been waiting for, when Hubbub met Xenia. It was far better than we had hoped. Hubbub was taken completely by surprise, and Xenia was playing her part perfectly. He was convinced he was in company with a wild polecat, and that any wrong move of his would bring disaster to the community. "Oh," he groaned between parted lips, "these are my best clothes. Listen, little skunky unky, I'm not going to hurt you. I love skunks, I do." Losing his balance, he brought his suspended foot down a little faster than Xenia liked, and she began violently chattering her teeth and pounding the ground with her front feet. "Why doesn't someone tell me what to do?" the boy pleaded between ventriloquist lips. "You're doing all right," said Tony softly from behind his tree. "Just be nice to little kitty. If anything happens, we'll take care of you. We'll bury you head down." Zany broke the tension of the scene. His coming gave Hubbub an additional fright, for the pup made a run for Xenia. "You!" yelled Hubbub. "Don't do it! Don't do that, Zany! Don't do that!" But Zany never hesitated. Apparently he had been looking for Xenia, and now, with his usual delight, he rammed right into her, sending her rolling over and over on the ground. Hubbub broke and ran, taking cover behind the same tree with Tony. There was a scuffle as each one tried to force the other out in the line of supposed danger. Then they looked back, one hand on each side of the tree. It was a different scene from the one they anticipated, however. In place of finding a dog in most miserable circumstances and the countryside in need of deodorant, they saw Jenny holding the skunk and petting it. "No!" exclaimed Tony. "Mrs. Campbell, you're not doing what you're doing. That couldn't be." "Yes, I am doing this," Jenny laughed. "What is the matter with you boys getting all upset about our pet?" "Yes, come here, I want you to meet Xenia." "You want us to meet which?" "Xenia. Come on, she is one of the nicest skunks in the forest." "Xenia, come on." The boys came forward cautiously, shooting many a side glance at me. "Come on, fellas," I said, leading them up to Jenny and her pet. "This little one is all right. Go ahead and pet her. She loves it." Soon there was a circle around the skunk, everyone making over the creature, while Zany tried his best to divert some attention to himself. Within an hour, our lads had met Zowie and Zipper and fallen in love with both. They moved into the same sleeping cabin they had occupied years before. Here they unpacked, got into some Northwoods clothes, and made ready to assume their duties in the sanctuary. At the sanctuary. Presently Jenny announced dinner. She remembered well the tastes of these boys and planned the meals accordingly. The crowning feature was a huge blueberry pie. It was always a favorite with them. "Listen here, young fellow," Tony said to Bub as he was finishing his second helping. "If you are going to be cook at this camp, you have to know how to bake a blueberry pie." "I can make one," insisted Bub. "Like this?" "Well, I wouldn't want to be a copycat." The boys' eyes grew heavy soon after dinner. The long day of travel, the cool air, and the quiet of the forest had their heads nodding before the evening was half done. We had talked of many things, particularly our plans for the Grand Canyon trip. Bub was especially stirred by the thought of mountain lion pictures. We promised to make extra pictures for him if the opportunity came. We told of the 7 secrets of Somewhere Lake and the hope we held for them. Then, when they could listen no more, we excused them for the night. I passed by the window of their cabin as the 2 boys were crawling in bed. Zany had already assigned himself to Tony's cot and was made quite welcome. I heard Tony's voice. "Isn't it hard to believe we are up here?" "I guess it is hard for me to know what to believe," answered Bub.